Welcome everyone to More Than Walking's monthly discussion on mental health awareness, because it's May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to be talking about the challenges and triumphs we've had in caring for our mental health as people with disabilities. My name is Jonathan, and I am a C7 complete quadriplegic since 2006. And I'll be hosting a discussion this evening. And I'd like to introduce Corey and Joel. If you guys can introduce your injury, where you're from, and something you are proud of. And I'm proud of all of us being here. So you can't take that one.
I'll go first. My name's Corey. I am a C4, C5 quadriplegic. Since 2005, so it'll be 16 years next month, June 12th. I sustained my injury in a diving accident unrelated to my work in the Navy. And something that I would say that I'm very proud of, I would say I'm proud of my family because they have kept me grounded and shown me an unconditional and unwavering love despite all that we kind of experience and go through. Very proud of my wife and my children.
I'm Joel, and I'm a C6, C7 complete quadriplegic since 2010, so I'm 11 years into this. And Corey, I'm with you. I was blessed with fantastic family. I met people in my initial rehab at Shepherd Center that nobody came to see them. There was nobody coming in and out of the rooms. Nobody was there. And I was thinking, what's going to happen to this guy when he leaves here? Do they go to nursing homes? And I do a lot of volunteer work here in Knoxville. Patricia Neal is a rehab center here that had their first spinal cord injured patient in 1978 was the first one they had in. So we've got a peer support group there that's pretty solid. I like to go talk with newly injured spinal cord patients and let them know that there is life after spinal cord. It's different, but there's life. And then I'm on the Mayor's Council on Disability Issues here. And then I'm on the board of directors with the Independent Living Center here, which is Disability Resource Center. So that's kind of how I try to stay busy as far as the mental health end of it. I feel like if I'm helping somebody else, I'm blessed. I know that there's somebody who's going to be here to help me. I know that I am blessed, but I also know there's a lot of people that aren't. So I try to plug in and see if there's any way I can help them.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Corey. So first question I want to bounce around. What have been your greatest or most persistent challenges regarding mental health? And have they been related to your spinal cord injury?
I'll go first since Corey went first last time. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, my mental health challenges definitely have been more challenging since my injury. Finding that line, doing all that you can for yourself, but knowing your limitations too, and not being too proud to ask for help with whatever it is. And it's good when you can get a group of guys and gals together that has similar injuries, because you could be struggling to do something and somebody else could have been struggling. No sense reinventing the wheel. So as much as my family loves me and as much as they care for me, there's things that they can only guess at. And Corey would have to agree with that. You would too, Jonathan. I mean, they can have a lot of empathy, but when you find yourself in this actual position, there's sometimes, I guess mental health wise, maybe I'm just having a day of dropsies. There's just a frustration builds up. I just want to knock stuff off the table and scream to the top of my lungs real quick and be done with it. And I try not to take it out on the people who love me.
I can definitely understand that. It's the feeling of mentally you are so, and we are so independent, but physically the dependency just drives you up a wall. And so I find myself even 16 years in, if I see something near a table or if it drops, I immediately knee-jerk reaction is to jump at it before it drops or before it falls. And then knowing that, like, if it happens, but I saw it beforehand, but everybody else may not come across as taking it seriously enough, it gets me like wound up because I'm like, I could see that happening, but I can't do anything about it because I can't physically move it. You know, take for example, like, you know, having children, they have a tendency to want to put the cup at the end of the counter. And it's like, why is it at the end of the counter? There's so much more space. And then I want to move it, but I don't want to continually tell them to move it because then it gets on their nerves. But I know that they can't understand it. So it's difficult because it's like, you want to just take care of it and just have it one and done, but you can't do it. So for me, I know that has been the biggest struggle, is being mentally independent, but physically dependent on others. And you said it very clearly, like, people can empathize with you to a certain degree, but only like-minded people with with experiences that are the same can really gather what you mean when you're doing this. So I know for me, I just try to do whatever I can, all that I can, to keep myself from getting to a place of resentment.
Yeah, well, avoiding resentment, I think, is an interesting challenge. So I was the last member of my family to kind of encounter disability or something life-threatening. So prior to me, mental illness kind of loomed large. And in some ways that really helped prepare me for like the things I faced after my spinal cord injury. Like I was good like the first several months, mental health wise. I didn't really get depressed that much. But as soon as I started college and I was outside of the hospital setting and I was the one kid on campus in a chair, or, I saw my hallmates going out to parties or events and I couldn't join. That was really challenging for me. And so, and that would come back. And a lot of it had to do with almost like survivor guilt because I was injured in India. And I came back to the US and did my rehab. I always felt like I was almost separated from part of my family, or, separated from these friends of mine who I knew were really struggling at a whole other level that I wasn't, and I had to do something about it. And so there was that constant pressure. And when I was there, when I would go back to India, it felt great to be able to do something. I felt like I was making a difference. I felt like I was rolling outside, and just by people looking at me or even staring at me, I was helping change perceptions, right? So I felt like, oh, cool. And then when I came back to college, I felt like a nobody. I was like the kid in the chair who can't go to the party. And that threw me for a loop a lot. But prior to that, before my injury, I had an older brother, and I still have an older brother who struggles with schizophrenia. And that had started when I was in middle school. And I remember for the longest time, it wasn't until my spinal cord injury, I don't think, that we recognized it as a mental illness, or as a mental health issue. So that kind of opened my eyes to, a whole nother realm of things. And I've been learning more about it since then. But I guess what I'm saying is it really kind of drove home to me that when I started experiencing depression because of my spinal cord injury, I was able to realize, okay, this is a thing. It's not something that I can control myself and just will myself to get out of. It's something that I actually need to ask help for, and it's not a bad thing to go talk to a college psychologist or ask to see, a mental health professional. It's a medical issue. So that really helped.
So that stigma, that feeling like, man, like I can't go places. How did you personally, and Joel, you too, like, I don't know if you felt that way, but how did you come out of that? Because I know for me, at the VA hospital in West Roxbury, they would every Saturday, faithfully, they'd come around and they have pizza, some soda, and they're just like, trying to get everybody to come out of their room and enjoy something other than the kind of mundane everyday routine. And then they started asking, hey, you want to go to the movies? And I was like no, like man, like I'm just gonna stay in my room, and because I was so still attached to walking and not wanting to go out because I felt like people were gonna stare at me and whatnot. So I was just used to duck the outings and whatnot. I didn't want it to come across like, oh, a day trip for seniors and disabled folks. Have a good time. This is what we're doing. How did you guys like kind of process that, like not realizing like, okay, there are some things that I just can't do anymore?
When I would feel what was going to be depression, I didn't get like depressed that I couldn't do anything. I got pissed. So, other people would be sad and they withdrawn. And I look back and that it was depression. It was, but mine didn't come out as woe's me. Mine came out as F you, get out of my way. But I used that fuel personally. I had a trach in, so I had to have, I don't know if anybody, I had to have trach in them.
Yeah.
But when I was first at Shepherd, I had to have somebody that could go with me to suck that stuff out. I had a lot of sputum in there. So as soon as they took that out, I would eat my breakfast in my room. And then at lunchtime, we had an option to have food brought up to the physical therapy room, or you could go to the cafeteria. And then at dinner, they could bring it to your room. You go to the cafeteria. And as soon as they took that trach out, I went to the cafeteria for lunch and for dinner. And I refused to let, I had, at that time, I had a couple of universal cuffs that you were trying to use I noticed Jonathan's got some on now. But yeah, I just spilt everything all over my shirt. I'd come up to the therapy gym and they could tell what I tried to have. The difference though is I was 48 when I was injured. Had I been a young man like Jonathan, I don't know that my mom would have wrapped around it. But my mind was just, I concentrated on the little things. And first was feeding myself, getting something to drink when I wanted it. And I felt the same thing that you felt when I was a shepherd. So, birds of a feather will fly. We used to get together after all the therapies. We called it cripple court. And we'd sit outside because everybody wanted to be outside. I don't know about you guys, but I was always told, man, I don't care what they had the temperature set on in the hospital. I was freezing. I was constant out with guys and girls that kind of had that thing to get that in common. And I would go to wherever they wanted to go. They go to the Braves game, I'd go. They would go to the grocery store I was in. For whatever reason, I didn't. And I guess too, because we were going as a group, I wasn't the only guy in a wheelchair like you were talking, Jonathan. You're at college, and now you get up to the stairs, and everybody else goes up to the second floor, and you're kind of like, well, I guess my trip ends here. So it was a different experience, but I know my family was worried about me coming home and not having the camaraderie. Like Corey, I'm sure you had other guys in the military at the VA.
Yeah.
Even though if y'all had been from different branches of service, y'all had service in common.
Yeah.
I can remember we'd sit there and we'd give them what I called the quad bird. So when we see the paraplegics coming by, I said, look at them with their abdominal muscles and their hands and everything. And then for everybody that was coming by, the quadriplegics there'd be some guy with a puff and sip wheelchair going, look at those quadriplegics that can move their arms, that are able to drive their own chairs. Somebody's always got it worse. And Corey hit on it with me. It was family and friends. And my heart goes out to the people that don't have the family and friend support, that are going through this alone. I can't imagine it. I really can't.
That is real.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Joel. I think for me, at college, I really think it took me to finally like exhaust myself of my shame. Like I would get to this point where, I would be feeling, and it would come in waves, like not every day, but something would happen. Like I was looking forward to spending time with people, or I don't know, maybe the weather was bad, and class would end and all the classmates would go out one door and I would go out the other door by myself, wait for the wheelchair van to pick me up while everyone else goes to the cafeteria to hang out, right? So something like that, and it would just throw me off. And if anything else was happening, these voices of like, oh, you're not good enough, you shouldn't be here, you should be grateful, you shouldn't be complaining, all of those different things would start bombarding me, and I would just like lock myself up in my room and not come out. And I think at some point it just kind of took wading through all of that and getting it all out, and then me asking someone to like talk with me or to come out and help me, like just explicitly, hey, I need someone to talk to. I can't do this myself. Other times, I was really fortunate to have some friends who would call me, or it would be my mom calling me and I would answer the phone, so sometimes it wasn't me doing something that, could get me out of that funk, but I just had to be open and ready for the time when someone did come in and extend a helping hand. And I remember it got bad one time. Like I never felt like I was like suicidal, but man, I mean, there was one night where I rolled out my dorm room and into the parking lot at night and just looked down at the other end of the parking lot, which was a slope. I went down into a kind of gully with trees, and I imagined to myself, I was like, if all I have to do is let go of my wheels and no one will find me. Like that's how I was feeling. And I was just like, I rolled back in and I texted a friend and they came over. It was someone who would come over and help me occasionally get dressed or clean my room when I needed help. And it was just such a relief. And I think I ended up writing a poem, or kind of drew a picture in a poem that had a lot of expletives in it that night. But I drew like a stick figure version of myself. And as if I had like cut everything away. Like if I eliminate all the superficial things, like who am I kind of drawing. And And I was reflecting on, like, if I treat other people the way I'm treating myself right now, like all the judgment and the shame and that self shaming talk, I would be such a terrible person. Like, so the way we treat ourselves and view ourselves, if we turn it around and say, if you saw someone who was feeling bad or was feeling lonely, would you shame them the same way that you're shaming yourself? No. And so why do it to ourselves? And I think that's something, that perspective is something I learned having gone through it, and is something I keep trying to remember whenever I start feeling, hearing those doubts again, is just like, you don't want to be that person.
Yeah, wow. It reminds me like that you hit that like nail on the head. It reminds me of like a line in one of my songs called "You Should Know," and I said, "Devil on your shoulder, like middle finger, your faith, purchase a one-way ticket down a flight or staircase." Like you literally are looking for an out to relieve you of what this newfound suffering, right? And the almost contradiction that we all have is that most times when another person is down, you don't necessarily just go with the flow and say, give up to that person. You can understand, to some degree, why they reach such a low point. But you naturally want to encourage them to keep striving, to keep living, because, you'll, like Joel said, there is life after paralysis. You just have to navigate it differently. You have to manage things differently, and that's key.
That's totally true. And this kind of segues into the next question. What have been some of the bright spots where we've been on the other side, and looked back and seen that these challenges have become useful, and that we've learned from them and been able to apply them?
The brightest spots I've had is when it's been with people that I've met, and you never know, when you're doing volunteer work and in and out, you're never going to know what effect you had on a person. You met with them, maybe it was for 15 minutes, maybe it was for an hour and a half. I may never see them again, but the brightest spots have been for me a few times that I bumped into some people, and they literally teared up and said, "You don't know how much what you shared with me influenced me," and how when I said, you don't know when you're out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody with a disability. You don't know how you're affecting other people, and I get more from that than I do anything that was accomplished as far as individual.
Yeah, seeing how we help others is such a boost compared to what we accomplish ourselves.
It's almost like when you're kind of going with the flow of life, like, walking is kind of like a universal thing, because most people on the planet are walking. And if they are struggling with a disability, it's not always physical. It's a low percentage here in the United States as well, as far as like the physical outward appearance. But like your story becomes that much more enriching to individuals when they know that you've experienced something calamitous. And through your resiliency and ability to persevere through whatever you're going through, just adds fuel to the person whose tank is going on low or virtually on empty. Like you said, you could talk to somebody randomly, and that person, you may never know the profound effect, but you might have saved that person's life. They could have been one gunshot away from taking their life. They could have been one step away from jumping off that ledge, but just that interaction, because you just wind up feeling so alone because you turn inwardly. But when you start realizing that other people can encourage you, then that becomes more fulfilling for you. And so I can agree with that. I know through my music, you know, I've touched a lot of people and they've made comments like, man, like, Fees, man, like, yo, what you said on this particular song, you know, it hit home. It made me, you know, reevaluate life. And here it is. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I see you and I see the type of moves that you're making. It's inspiring. And for me, I find great satisfaction that God can use me as a light to pull somebody out of their dark situations. It's refreshing because then it pulls me out of that hole that I could be going into, because we're a team now. Even though we may not see each other, you're still on my team. And if I can help you and then you can help somebody else, then we can all get through it together in some way, shape, or form.
I think for me, the brightest spots have been my experiences with my brother, who currently is still in the hospital. He's been in the hospital for the last several years, and it's been kind of on and off. And the thing with schizophrenia is that it's so seductive, you know? When you hear voices, people who hear voices, they really hear voices, you know, and they experience something that is so real to them that it is almost impossible for them to deny that it's true. And in order to kind of interact with my brother, you know, when he's, you know, been going through some of those things, is trying to enter that reality and say, okay, yes, you hear this voice is saying that, so let me work with the logic of that to try to speak some truth in your context, right? It's like a game of chess, not trying to figure out how to get them to hear what you want to say. It's figuring out what do they need to hear in order to take one step closer to a healthier reality than the one that they're living in, you know? And that is so hard because most of the time it involves you stepping into that really messy reality with them and kind of letting go of your agenda and goals and kind of wait and see. And at the very beginning, before my injury, you know, when my brother was going through stuff and I didn't really understand what it was, I would just get upset, you know, like the rest of my family. We were involved in the charismatic church, and, you know, yeah, at some point we thought it was like demonic warfare, stuff like that. And it just kind of got clouded in this mystique of, you know, religion, and never really got addressed as a mental health issue. And we would just be arguing back and forth, theological stuff, you know, whatnot. But I think after my injury and, you know, going through my own experiences of depression and things like that, I kind of got an idea, just a little bit, you know, of that feeling of not being able to get out yourself and needing someone to reach in and just be there with you. Not really solve all the challenges, but being willing to walk through them. So that's you know, that story from my brother is not over. You know, he's still struggling with it. But I think that lesson I learned from going through my own stuff since my injury. Hola, Hyber.
Buenas noches para todos. Mi nombre es Hyber Murillo, de Palmira, Colombia. Soy afortunado por conocer la música. En este momento, a pesar de la lesión, me desempeño como DJ. y tengo la oportunidad de ayudar a otras personas que están muy tristes por la lesión que acaban de entrar. Y desde muy joven soy apasionado por los deportes extremos y la motivación para poder seguir practicando deportes extremos es la que me lleva a salir adelante, motivando así a personas que tienen alguna lesión y a personas que están físicamente bien.
Hyber, since you're here now, let me ask you a question that we've been discussing. What have been your greatest or your most persistent mental health challenges for yourself? Whether with your spinal cord injury or independent of your spinal cord injury.
Mi único problema mental después de la lesión fue el rechazo de las mujeres.
That was a big one for me too.
I think everybody's
No
felt that.
I was used to
Okay.
that well before my spinal cord injury.
Uh,
Oh, okay. Ok. Realmente eso fue lo único que me afectó porque yo siempre he sido muy positivo. Toda mi vida he estado acompañado por una mujer y cuando me accidenté, la pareja que tenía me dejó y duré casi 8 años para poder conseguir pareja después de tanto rechazo. Realmente yo soy muy positivo y siempre le doy motivación a todas las personas, incluso a las que no tienen lesión medular. Siempre soy muy positivo porque vivo anclado al amor de Dios. Yo he visto personas que están físicamente bien y tristes. Y me pongo a hablar con ellos y les doy esa motivación porque ven que a pesar de mi lesión, soy muy feliz y ellos son tristes. Entonces, mentalmente, después de la lesión, no me afecta mucho.
That's so true what you said. You know, it sounds like the difference for you was when you said you grounded your love in something else, someone else other than the women around you. You felt confident about who you were, whether or not someone else liked you. That's true?
Sí, fue lo único que cambió.
Yeah. No, I think that's a real challenge that a lot of people face, and I faced myself. I think it's especially in college after my accident was I thought I was someone who was fun to hang around, but no one looked at me that way. And that was very frustrating. So Corey and Joel, you guys have anything else to add to what Hyber was saying?
yeah, nah, like that. I thought it was funny because like that's like the first thought that comes to your mind. Like, once I got out of the kind of like comatose state and I was in a relationship, I was like, oh man, ain't nobody gonna love me. Because I already had preconceived notions like our relationship isn't going to work out, which, we had to part ways, you know what I mean? Because there's a distance and the stress of the accident or what have you. But, yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to get married. I'm not going to have kids. I'm just going to be stuck. And that's not any of the things that I personally have planned for my life. So, yeah, you start saying to yourself, man, I'm going to be rejected. But, I mean, I'm not going to lie, like I wrestled with that. But then a lot of people, like women came out like the woodwork. It was like, I like you and I always have. And I'm just like, gosh, when you say that now, like, I don't like, now I got to like try to figure out like my new life and my new path. But then, once I met my wife shortly after being injured like about 2.5, 3 years, that's when I realized that it's physically you can be altered, but as long as your personality hasn't changed, that characteristic about you will attract anybody. And people will then stop looking at the physical attributes and then they start looking at what really stimulates them mentally. And if you can capture a person's mind and their imagination, then all of a sudden, like, your chair is cool. Like, I used to like drive my wife up and down the street. Sometimes I put it on the fastest speed it could go and whatnot, get nervous. You just find different ways, but I could definitely relate to Hyber and, just that feeling of like angst that you're not going to be loved the same, especially if you're used to surrounding yourself with, the female companionship.
Yeah, actually, I was in the middle of a divorce and was seeing somebody, and the girl I was seeing, I knew our relationship was going to be over with this accident. There wasn't no doubt about that. But I turned 49 while I was still in rehab, and women occupied so much of my waking moment for all 49 of those years. I finally said, you know what, maybe I'm going to give this a break, free myself up a little bit. So I went back to school, got a master's degree, started volunteering. But yeah, there's times that I think, not necessarily the physical aspect of it, but yeah, just the connection that you have, the man with a woman. But yeah, I guess at times I miss that, but I don't know where I would meet someone and how that would work out. But I'm out. I go out all the time. I drive. Got friends that we go out. We go to different areas. We go to happy hour, to music festivals. So if I met somebody and even if we just got along on a thing for going to movies and going to dinner and things, I would be open to it, but I don't actively look for a companion.
In summary, our mental health really plays a huge role in how we view ourselves, the realities that we're living in, and how others view us. And it doesn't matter what's happened to us physically. If we are mentally in the right place, we can overcome a lot of challenges and we can attract the help and affection of others around us. And sometimes it means reaching out for help. And because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to share, there's this great organization called Mental Health America that you can see on my screen. And they have this free toolkit. If you go to mhanational.org, they have this free toolkit that you can download. And it has a bunch of quick kind of cheat sheets that can assist you in kind of promoting ideas of mental health on social media that you can copy and paste with like cool facts, as well as some self-help tips on how to overcome stress, trauma, anger, frustration, negative self-talk, just, some quick cheat sheets that you can share or use yourself. And they have resources in English and in Spanish. So I think this could be something really useful if you want to take a look for it. I'll include the link in the description and I'll send that link to you guys as well. Anyone have any closing thoughts that you would want to leave with yourself if you find yourself in a dark spot, or someone else who's going through the same struggles you've been through? What's something that you would want to say to them?
I think for me, it's really been my faith in God that has helped me persevere. And I would say to anybody, God has a plan for your life. Don't count yourself short just because of what you may have experienced or what you're going through. Because right when you're thinking that it's not going to happen, that's when God is doing a greater work in you. So just continue to fight on and endure through it.
Yeah, no, I would tell them if you're getting angry, use that anger to push yourself forward. That's extra adrenaline. Kind of like if you ever were in a scuffle with somebody. Never chase a man that's running from you. He's already got that adrenaline. Use that anger. Use it for positive. Don't use it to beat yourself up. Use it to beat up whatever problem is you have. And one thing I tell them while you're in therapy, you knock down as many pins as you can they put in front of you. Go to bed tired and wake up in the morning and knock down as many pins as you can. And if you're angry, use that anger for something positive. There's no future in the past, man. You got to get with this thing. You got to get with. The quicker you do, the faster you'll turn the corner.
Esto es el comienzo de un nuevo inicio. Aquí comienza una nueva vida en condiciones diferentes, pero es nueva y hay que afrontarla de la mejor manera. Hay que dar gracias a Dios por esta segunda oportunidad que tenemos de poder vivir y de respirar.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think that will conclude our discussion. We'll see you next time.
Awesome, man.
Go
Thank
take
you guys
care of your
for
mental
sharing.
health.
Yes, sir. Adios, Pablo.
Nice meeting
Nice meeting you as well.
Nice seeing you.
Adios.
Adios.